Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson recently appeared on Ariel Helwani's show in studio for a more long forum interview. It was about 50 minutes long, and they talked about a wide variety of subjects. He was there somewhat to promote his upcoming fight on May 5th, but one subject got brought up in particular, and that was when Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson might retire, and he had mentioned that this next fight that he has on May 5th with Adriano Moraes could potentially be his last fight. Since there are a ton of new MMA fans, MMA has kind of blown up in the last couple years, and Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson hasn't been in the UFC for a while. I feel like there's a lot of A, younger fans, and B, newer fans of the sport who don't really know who he is and why he is held in such a high regard. I also feel like he is not talked about enough. That's why the thumbnail says one of the true unsung heroes, because I feel like he doesn't really get brought up in conversations regarding like the greatest of all time and things like that. So I want to pay homage to him and go over his career and some of the amazing things that he did in it. And yeah, just kind of give my reasons as to why I think that he is one of the greatest of all time. Before we get into it, please like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it, dude. I'll thank you in advance because I'm Canadian, eh? So thank you very much. Now, Demetrious Johnson, objectively, if you don't want to say that he's one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, it is objective that he is one of the most decorated mixed martial artists of all time. This man has won 12 UFC championships, 11 of those being consecutive title defenses. And for his final bout in the UFC, where he ultimately lost his title to Henry Cejudo, it was a very hotly contested decision that was a split decision, and there are still people to this day that hold the position that he should have won that fight. I actually don't mind the scoring and it going to Henry Cejudo, but there's still a lot of people that do think that he won. Now, before all of the success that he realized at flyweight, which is absolutely his natural weight class, he was down in the trenches of bantamweight because there was no flyweight division available yet, fighting guys way larger than him. And even in this weight class, fighting guys way bigger, he was still able to make it to title contention against the infamous Dominic Cruz. For some reason, though, Demetrious Johnson was never able to get recognition from the fans that I personally think he more than deserved. Out of his 11 title defenses, he had 7 finishes. So he's not like having boring decisions. He's not having boring outcomes. He's getting that like ratio of finish to title defenses is better than some of the most famous and well-paid UFC champions that are around today. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't quite understand why he never got the love. Now, the knock on him, or rather his title reign, to be more specific, was that the level of competition he was facing was not quite what other divisions had, and also quite a bit smaller. You know what I mean? The dude's 5'3", so there's a lot of casual fans, and I'm not saying that to be degrading, that don't really want to watch a guy who's 5'3" fight. I guess, even though Henry Cejudo went on to be quite famous at a staggering 5'4", although he did kind of have to move up in weight and do other things in order to acquire that fame. I don't really agree with the argument, though. I don't feel like the level of competition was as low as people like to make it out to be. I think that Demetrious Johnson, made it look that way. He made it look so easy on so many different occasions against so many different body types that it made people think, well, everybody in this division sucks, so of course you keep winning. There are other divisions that are quite shallow. Now, one argument would be, well, yeah, but the bigger guys, there's always the danger that they could potentially knock you out or something like that. But it's just weird. He kind of gets, that's a knock on him. But there are other champions that have had the same kind of thing that don't really get the same level of like disparagement. Another knock on him, which I find to be absolute horseshit, was the fact that he wouldn't fight TJ Dillashaw, which, by the way, would have been for his flyweight title, with TJ Dillashaw having nothing to lose on the line. And Demetrious Johnson wasn't even against a fight with TJ Dillashaw, but what he asked was was that TJ Dillashaw took a fight at flyweight to prove he could make the weight and fight, healthily, I guess, and be established at flyweight. We know how that story went, right? He never ended up fighting TJ Dillashaw. He lost his belt to Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo fought TJ Dillashaw at flyweight for the flyweight title, and look what happened, dude. He was right. TJ Dillashaw could not make the weight without using enhancements. He popped for EPO. So in my opinion, Demetrious Johnson got he got hate for not wanting to fight him. I feel like he is 100% vindicated now that we know that TJ Dillashaw had to use EPO in order to get down to 125. That was a very weird fight with Henry Cejudo. He was getting fucking thrown all over the place like a rag doll by little touches from Henry Cejudo. So I feel like he's kind of vindicated from that one. He literally showed us things that people didn't even know were possible to do in a professional fight. You might try this kind of shit out in training, but nobody would ever think to do the shit that he did in an actual fight where the stakes are so much higher. The potential for like the consequence of fucking up is there, right? Where you could lose, you could get knocked out, you could get submitted, you could lose your title that you've held onto for so long. But in his last successful title defense, we saw the beautiful suplex to an armbar in midair. Like, this guy is incredible, in my opinion. And I understand that, other arguments that were against him being like a successful UFC champion in terms of monetary value, where that was that his personality wasn't the greatest. I remember him after, I believe it was after he defeated Ray Borg, actually, with that incredible finish, something of the likes that we have never seen in professional MMA before. In his post-fight speech with Joe Rogan, he asked for $1 million payday. He says, I have still yet to have $1 million pay. This is after 11 successful title defenses. This man has still not made $1 million in one fight. And Francis Ngannou is over here complaining about $8 million a fight. Okay, so you know what I mean, dude. We're not going to talk about that, but either way, dude. I, for one, liked his personality. The reason I liked his personality, not because it was like overly entertaining. We weren't going to get the best press conferences. We weren't going to get like trash talk back and forth. He wasn't like brash and loud and like right in your face, in the way that some personalities might be, but he was genuinely himself. You know what I mean? A little bit nerdy, a little bit like ADHD hyper, like childish almost at times, but it's just him, dude. And he wasn't gonna fucking change for other people, which I greatly admire and I appreciate. I don't want people to be something else because they think it'll be popular. Like, I don't appreciate that. That's kind of why I started this channel. I'm sick of watching like corporate MMA media just fucking spew out the same talking points, you know what I mean? And obviously there are some very good alternative MMA content creators, MMA media members, I guess you could call them, alternative MMA media. But that was why I kind of started doing this, because I was like, I fucking hate the way these guys talk. Like, it's not really them. Do you know what I mean? But anyways, after his loss to Henry Cejudo, the UFC did something that it's never done before. Something totally out of left field. I remember being absolutely shocked when this happened, because the UFC, when it comes to like doing shit with other promotions, it's almost never gonna happen. You know what I mean? There will never be a cross promotion tournament or fight the way that you see like Bellator doing with Ryzen, for instance. So when this trade was announced, which is, that's something also that you don't really hear in MMA. A trade? You know what I mean? Like, what, are we in fucking hockey now? Like, what? It's just not something that you would typically hear. Anyways, they traded him for one Ben Askren, okay, who was I know that he became a meme towards the end of his career, and if you're a new MMA fan, you might not be aware that he was a long reigning champion at Bellator, never lost his title, long reigning champion at ONE FC, never lost his title. By the time he reached the UFC, he was an undefeated 18-0. And I guess somebody who the UFC thought that they could spice up their welterweight division with, they ended up being correct, but I don't think it was in the way that they thought.
Clock is brought to you by Modelo.
You know what I mean? Honestly, I remember hearing the news and I was like, what? Why? That sucks. But because I felt like if anybody deserved an immediate rematch, you know what I mean? Which, by the way, those get handed out like fucking fentanyl in the streets of Vancouver, British Columbia. So nowadays, if there was some guy who deserved an immediate rematch, it was Demetrious. You've got fucking 11 consecutive title defenses. You lose a split decision to a guy, by the way, in Henry Cejudo, who in their first meeting, he fucking bodied. He butchered him. And then it's kind of like how Nate Diaz finishes Conor McGregor. And then Conor comes back and wins, what was it, a majority decision or a split decision? I can't quite remember off the top of my head. And it's like, what, you're good with that? You know what I mean? If there was anybody that deserved the immediate rematch for their title, it was Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, but instead they traded him. Which, you know what I mean? Whatever. No trilogy, no rematch, no chance to win his belt back. Off to Singapore. When Demetrious Johnson went over to ONE Championship, he was immediately tossed into the fire. Obviously, as one would expect from a guy who still to this day has the most consecutive title defenses in the UFC, I believe, because he might be tied with George St. Pierre. No, he's not, because George St. Pierre lost his title and had to retain it. John Jones didn't lose, but he lost his title having a fight overturned because he tested fucking positive, okay? You know. Also, though, for the record, I know that ONE Championship likes to talk about how their weight cutting program is like superior to those promotions in America. I call bullshit, dude. I do. I call bullshit. And I'll tell you why, man. Demetrious Johnson is essentially just fighting the same size guys that he was fighting when he was fighting bantamweight in the UFC. The only difference is he's cutting less weight. I feel like the hydration tests, there are ways to get around them. I don't think they're as foolproof as ONE FC likes to make them. Dude, Adrian Moraes is fucking huge. Okay? I know Mighty Mouse might have thicker legs than him. Not by much, though, dude. Look at them side by side. The guy is fucking huge compared to Mighty Mouse. I know he's not huge. Relative, though, right? I think he's about half a foot taller. He's a bantamweight. You know what I mean? Even Eddie Alvarez, some of Eddie Alvarez's opponents, I thought, fuck me, dude. They weren't taller than him. And like I know that height's not everything, but some of them looked fucking ginormous. And it seems like the guys that came over to ONE FC from America, from Europe, things like this, just kind of like believed their weight cutting system. Even like Cosmo Alexander, the guy that fucking shattered Sage Northcutt's face. That dude used to fight at 170, right? So he comes over and he's fighting welterweight now. But the guys at welterweight are fucking middleweights. And the guys that Eddie Alvarez are fighting are fucking welterweights, right? And Eddie Alvarez was a lightweight. So it didn't really, to me, their weight cutting program doesn't really see. And I feel like the people that have been in ONE FC, the people that are in Asia, right, have probably figured out ways around this. So that's why, but whatever, dude. Yeah, they made it seem like essentially, well, everybody's going to be the same. We just moved everybody up a weight class, so there's less weight cutting. And then you see Demetrious Johnson's opponents, and you're like, wait, what? That guy's a flyweight? Oh, no, he's not. He's a fucking bantamweight, okay? But whatever. Either way, DJ's back at his original weight class now. Not his natural one, but it is what it is. Fighting guys as much as half a foot taller than him. And I know that height's not everything, as I just said, but they're certainly bigger all around. So, it is what it is, man. But Demetrious Johnson comes in, wins 3 straight in ONE Championship. 1 by guillotine, 2 by unanimous decision. Becomes the ONE FC World Grand Prix champion, and setting himself up for a title shot with the current or former ONE FC's bantamweight champion. Now, this is exactly what I would have expected from Mighty Mouse. You know what I mean? It's literally, he's just Mighty Mouse doing Mighty Mouse shit, okay? Adriano Moraes, the first time that they fought, had a record of 20-4. Okay, the dude's good. He's not a nobody. ONE FC they have very shallow competition in the larger weight classes. Their smaller weight classes, though, are very good. Like, there are a bunch of guys that I would be very curious to see how they would stack up against the guys at bantamweight, against the guys at flyweight. They've got a very big pool of smaller individuals that are very good fighters. One of the most unexpected things happened, though, right? Mighty Mouse, first loss by finish, right? He's only ever lost 3 times, twice in his bantamweight, both unanimous decisions, once to Brad Pickett, once to Dominic Cruz, and then, of course, the loss to Henry Cejudo by split decision. But on this day, I think it was, April... I didn't write it in my notes. Fantastic. Either way, dude, 2 minutes, 24 seconds of round number 2, Demetrious was hit with a beautiful knee to a grounded opponent, right? Which was a rule that is obviously not implemented. It's completely banned in the UFC and in Bellator and in other, probably even the PFL. I'm not positive, but in America it seems that it's banned. Over there, though, legal move. Hit him square in the face. Beautiful. A few seconds later, fight's over. Demetrious Johnson, first ever loss by finish. Fucking crazy. Never saw it coming. Dude defends his title against the World Grand Prix. Jesus, fuck, dude. Champion. Whatever. Good for him, man. Good for Adriano Moraes. Dude, my mouth ain't working. Tongue swollen, okay? Anyways, now this next part, in my opinion, is why Demetrious Johnson is one of the greatest fighters of all time. How does a loss like that affect you? You know what I mean? I know we have some greats in our sport that have never lost. So we've never had to see what it looks like when they come back from a defeat. Obviously, Jon Jones, Khabib Nurmagomedov, we've never had to see what a defeat like that would do to them. But we have seen it before. You know what I mean? George St. Pierre, Matt Serra, George St. Pierre, Matt Hughes. There's many more. Anyways. Now, Demetrious Johnson, though, right? One of the greatest of all time. Again, in my opinion, but still. 507 days later, roughly, August 27th, 2022, wrote this date down, okay? Demetrious Johnson exacts his revenge in one of the most poetic, picture-perfect ways possible. 3 minutes, 50 seconds of round number 4. A beautiful, stunning, masterful, flying knee KO to hurt Moraes, after hurting Moraes with a picture-perfect right hand.
For DJ to make that big movement coming in to overcommit.
Setting traps, Marias.
DJ's one of his slightly smaller movements.
Oh, big right, DJ! It's big knee! That's it!
DJ just made it.
On the feet. His one loss by finish, he gets it back in an even more emphatic way than the initial loss. These are the moments, in my opinion, that truly defy greatness. You know what I mean? To be able to come back from a defeat like that, to beat the guy that beat you, but even better. You know, I know there are fighters who have never been defeated, but this is rare. That is rare. That you see somebody go completely undefeated and get out. You don't typically see that. That happens once in a while. And we never get to see what it looks like when they have to deal through adversity. But it is what it is, dude. And for Demetrious Johnson to come back after his first KO loss ever to a guy much bigger than him and to finish him the way that he did is fucking greatness. I don't care if he's undefeated or not. You know what I mean? That doesn't matter to me. That's fucking greatness. Okay? Demetrious Johnson deserves all of the respect. Right? As I said at the beginning, there are probably a lot of new fans that don't know who he is. Either they started watching, you know, in the last couple years, maybe due to COVID or whatever, or if they're a younger generation, they might not know who he is because he hasn't been there. But, dude, he might be one of the few champions that I would pick out of these other organizations like ONE FC, PFL, Bellator, whatever, you name it. He might be one of the few that I think that if he were to come back over here to the UFC, he would run shot in his weight class. I think he'd beat Brandon Moreno. I think he'd beat Davidson Figueiredo. Like, he is so good, man. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't know who he is. But even by today's standards, he's like, what, 36, I think? On the verge of retirement. And he is still as good as he is. He is a mastermind, not just in MMA, but in almost every area that he takes on in his life. You know, he's also a good role model, which I get is like fucking boring, dude. But to someone who's got kids, I appreciate it. So I want to live stream his fight on May 5th. I think that'd be a fun time, dude. He's a very admirable person, and I am fucking so happy that we got to watch him fight for as long as we did in the UFC. And I'm happy that he went on to go make his money elsewhere that he wasn't able to make in the UFC because he wasn't a pay-per-view draw. That's it, man. That's the end of this video. Like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it, dude. I'll thank you in advance, dude. I can't talk. Anyways, see you at the next video, dude. Bye-bye.